starting with compression. I'd like to present the technique of compression. It's a very versatile sports massage technique. What I'm going to do is demonstrate compression on all the major muscles of the body. Before I start, I'd like to introduce our model. This is Diane Urbanski, who is a cyclist and race walker and a massage therapist also. So I'm going to start first by working on the back, and I recommend that you follow in this particular order. I'm going to start on the upper back with compression. Now notice as I compress, first of all, my focus is on the major muscles throughout the entire technique. I'm always going to use a broad contact, and notice how I use my weight. So notice, for example, that my elbows are relatively straight. You're not going to lock them, but they're going to be straight enough that you can lean with your weight and use your weight for pressure. This way you'll save your arms and let your weight do the work for you. So here, my focus is on the back of the scapula, nice broad contact. And then my inner hand will focus on the erector spinae. I'm right next to the spine. You want to do it at a nice steady rhythm with the compression, so it gives us a pumping action, which is going to help to pump all the fluids through. Okay, I'm going to come to the head of the table now and focus on the upper trapezius, where I can lean in from above and compress. Here too, notice the nice steady rhythm. You can use two hands. Make this stroke specific to the belly of the muscles. And it's meant to be repeated a number of times in order to really be effective. Here too, I'm leaning into it. I get my body down lower so I can have a good lean. I'll change my angle a little bit and come into the rhomboids. Now it looks like I'm twisting a little bit, but I'm not really. It's just a very slight movement in a twisting direction. Don't twist the skin, but I'm just subtly shifting the tissue once I engage it. Now none of this should feel painful or invasive, so please, as you do this, please get good feedback from your partner. So you can see the nice steady rhythm here. The muscles, of course, get much thicker as we get down into the low back. And I can even lean into it to get a little stretch down in here too. Now let your other hand work at the same time. So your hands can work together. Now I have one hand on each side of the spine, focusing on the paraspinal muscles. You'll probably find it easiest to work across the spine to the opposite side. You find that it helps to spread the muscles out a little bit away from the spine. Look for tight muscles. Spend more time until you feel them become more fluid. You should feel a warming, a loosening. Now I'm focusing on the low back, so I'm into each of the erector spinae here. Feel the muscles. Make sure you're not doing a thrust. Rather, use your weight and lean in. If it's a real tight area, you can slow it down also. And sustain and keep a little more pressure. So just using my palm here, make sure you're not digging in with the heel of your hand. That would be too sharp. So use more of your palm. So the mechanics on this are very important. Lean, don't push. And now I'll come down into the low back. And here I can lean with some nice flat compression over the sacrum. And I'll come around to the other side here. And I'll go into, again, the low back. Now we can go right into the top of the iliac crest with some compression in order to loosen that attachment and open up the space between the rib cage and the iliac crest. Compression on the sacrum, nice flat contact, nice steady rhythm. Lean into it. And now I'll come to the hip, into the side of the hip here, gluteus medius. Now here also I can use a little different technique. I can use the flat of the fist, a nice open, relaxed fist. Two hands, notice how I alternate here to continue the nice steady rhythm. Gluteus medius is almost always quite hypertonic. So this is a real good way to loosen it, even if it is real tight. This is not invasive. Can come down a little lower now between the crest and the trochanter and come into the tensor fascia lata. Here we get a little more pointed and we compress, and this is a little more of a steady pressure and circular friction to get into tensor fascia lata. It's usually tight right next to the sacrum where it attaches on the side of the sacrum and ilium here. Again, feel the muscles soften. Stay with it till you feel it loosen and soften. Okay. Specific, using two hands here. Now take care that you're good and familiar with the bellies of the hamstrings here. We've got two medial hamstrings, semimembranosus and semitendinosus, one lateral hamstring, the biceps femoris. So now I'll do a variation here to put a little slack into the muscle by flexing the knee. Now the hamstrings are looser. Now my hand is coming down on top of semimembranosus and tendinosus. Center yourself right over that so that the shoulder, my shoulder is right above my hand, and I'm dropping my weight right down into it. Again, this should not hurt. If it does, then you're going too deeply too quickly. You stay with this belly also, and be careful that you don't go into the back of the femur. So biceps femoris comes up on an angle into the ischial tuberosity. Check that out. Palpate the muscle, feel that angle, and then get nice and specific so the palm of your hand is focusing right on that belly. Don't go straight up from the outside or you'll go into the back of the femur. And it does not feel good to have a bone compressed. Into the lower leg to the gastrocs. The hands fit nicely. one palm around each of the heads of the gastroc, the medial head and the lateral head. And again, nice steady rhythm, repetition. Don't push in or you'll cause pain. Just gentle leaning. Sensitive than some of our other muscles, so I don't use my palm as directly, rather I use the flats of my fingers too, and I let my hands just mold to the contour, to the shape of a quadriceps group. Focus especially on the line of rectus femoris. That's usually the tightest of the quad group. And I do it in a downward direction from the hip. I lean into it, and this helps to stretch the muscle away from the hip, reduce that tightness. Brings movement into the entire leg. It's pretty natural kind of movement here. Side of the thigh and the adductor group. I'm going to bring the leg into a figure 4 position. Put the foot at the inside of the other knee so it's nice and stable. Get your knee up on the table and angle your body weight. Okay. Now I'm going to come over to the other leg here so you can see a little bit better the work on the outside of the leg now. We can work TFL as well as the iliotibial band all the way down. So tensor fascia lata is just a short muscle up here on the side of the iliac crest, and you can come into it this time with the heel of the hand, press in, circle around. Try to maintain steady pressure, nice circular motion, and then continue that down the iliotibial band. Be careful not to use too much pressure here, as it's a sensitive aspect of the leg, of the thigh. So I press in, keep a steady pressure, and circle all the way down. Okay, so we work quads from above, we worked adductors on the inside, and now we're working the outside of the thigh. And I'm going to continue now into the lower leg on the anterior and lateral compartment of the lower leg, lateral to the tibia. These muscles here are generally quite tight, tibialis anterior, extensor digitorum right next to that, and the peroneal group coming off the head of the fibula, right down the side of the lower leg. So I'm going to compress. Here I'll use a smaller part of my palm now because these muscles are more narrow. Sink in with your weight and circle. I'm going to circle with my palm as I proceed downward, and I'll take it right into the ankle. I'll repeat that same line on tibialis anterior 3 times. These muscles generally are quite tight, especially in runners, so the repetition is really useful, and the feeling this will create is the person will feel a real flushing of blood into the area. Now I'm coming down a little bit lower, okay, so there's my first line was on tibialis anterior. Now I come a little bit more lateral into extensor digitorum and peroneus. So here's the head of the fibula. I'll start with my palm just below that, press in, and circle around. Nice steady pressure. It's more of a circular friction than anything else. Start by compressing into the front of the shoulder. Right into the front of the shoulder, we loosen various structures and tendons. Notice that I'm holding the hand out to the side just to keep it well stabilized. I'm just holding it at the wrist. And I'll go into biceps. So position the arm so the biceps is facing straight up towards the ceiling and come right into the front of it. Here's a good example to make sure that you're going right into the belly of the muscle. What would not feel good would be if you came into the side of it and rolled it out to the side one way or the other. Go straight in and out of it so we get pumping action into the muscle. Focus on the bottom third of the muscle, that's usually where it's tightest. I can go into the side of the arm, into brachialis, just to the side of the biceps, above the elbow, compress. It's usually a tight muscle there. And then I'll proceed into the forearms. You can do one-handed compression. And another variation is a two-handed compression and squeeze. Kind of combining like a petrissage squeeze and a compression where we can get the extensors and the flexors together. It's real effective for opening up the whole forearm. And take it down. And up the pecs. So I work the pecs a little bit with the arm in the front of the shoulder here. Here's another way to do that, and that is to come right into the top of the pecs. Now it's easier, of course, on a male, and in working with a woman, make sure you just stay up above the breast tissue. So instead of using the whole palm here, I'm just using the flats of the fingers. The pecs can get very tight, and this is a real effective stroke to get the blood moving in it, especially before doing more specific work. Weightlifter, for example, swimmer. So pumping action, just straight in and out. And you can do both sides this way.